It all started on a quiet Monday morning, the kind of morning where everything feels routine. The city was just waking up, with the usual hum of life filling the air. Cars honking, birds chirping, people rushing to work. But for one young woman, today was about to be anything but routine. Maya Carter, a brilliant, driven young lawyer, was on her way to her firm downtown. She had worked hard to get to where she was, overcoming hurdles that could have stopped anyone else in their tracks. Maya wasn't just any lawyer, she was sharp, confident, and unafraid to take on challenges, even when they seemed insurmountable. On the other side of town, Officer Jake Holloway was starting his shift. He was a veteran cop, the kind who believed he had seen it all. Jake carried himself with a certain air of authority, the kind that came from years of patrolling the same streets. But beneath his stern exterior lay something darker, a bias that had shaped the way he viewed certain people. Jake had a reputation on the force, one that wasn't talked about openly, but was understood. He had a way of making assumptions, and those assumptions often led to trouble. As fate would have it, their paths were about to cross in the most unexpected way. Maya had just left her apartment, her briefcase in hand, her mind racing through the tasks ahead. She had a big case coming up. Every minute counted. She didn't notice the police car trailing her as she pulled out of her parking spot. Jake had spotted her car and decided, for reasons known only to him, that she looked suspicious. Maybe it was the way she moved, or maybe it was just the car she drove. Whatever it was, Jake decided to pull her over. The flashing lights in her rearview mirror caught Maya off guard. She wasn't speeding, and her registration was up to date. Confused, she pulled over, her heart pounding slightly as she reached for her license and registration. Jake approached the car slowly, his hand resting on his holster. The tension was palpable as he knocked on her window. Maya rolled it down, her expression calm but curious. "Good morning, officer. Is there a problem?" she asked, her voice steady. Jake looked at her, his eyes scanning her face, her outfit, her car. "License and registration," he said curtly, ignoring her question. Maya handed over the documents, watching him carefully. She had dealt with police officers before, both as a citizen and in the courtroom. Something about this interaction felt off, but she kept her composure. Jake glanced at her license, his brow furrowing as he looked back at her. "Step out of the car," he ordered. Maya's eyebrows shot up. "Excuse me. May I ask why?" Jake's tone hardened. "Step out of the car, ma'am. Now." Maya hesitated for a moment, then complied, stepping out onto the sidewalk. She stood tall, her posture firm, refusing to let fear take over. Jake began questioning her, his tone accusatory, his words laced with implications that Maya didn't belong in the neighborhood, that she might be up to something illegal. It didn't take long for the situation to escalate, with Jake calling for backup and Maya finding herself handcuffed, despite her protests and the lack of any clear reason for her detainment. Passers-by started to gather, some pulling out their phones to record the scene. Maya felt the weight of their stares, the whispers of disbelief as they recognized her. She wasn't just another face in the crowd. She was Maya Carter, a rising star in the legal world. The injustice of the moment fueled her resolve. She knew her rights, and she knew that what was happening wasn't just wrong. It was a blatant abuse of power. As the backup arrived and Jake continued his harsh interrogation, Maya finally spoke up, her voice clear and unwavering despite the chaos around her. "Officer Holloway, you're making a mistake. I'm a lawyer, and I know exactly what you're doing. This isn't just about me. You've crossed a line, and I will hold you accountable." Jake smirked, his confidence unshaken. "Is that so? Well, good luck with that." Little did he know, Maya meant every word. She wasn't going to let this slide. She had the knowledge, the determination, and the resources to fight back, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been in her shoes. As the cameras continued to roll and the crowd grew larger, Maya made a silent vow. This was far from over. The scene ended with Maya being released, but the damage had already been done. She walked away that day with more than just a bad experience. She walked away with a mission. And as she sat in her office later that evening, reviewing the footage and preparing her next steps, she knew one thing for sure. Officer Holloway had no idea what was coming. The evening was quiet, but Maya's mind wasn't. She sat at her desk, her laptop open, the glow of the screen illuminating her determined face. The video footage from earlier played on a loop, each replay reigniting the fire inside her. She studied every detail, the way Jake's tone shifted, the look in his eyes, the subtle but telling body language that spoke volumes. It wasn't just about her anymore. This incident was part of a larger pattern, one that couldn't be ignored. Maya leaned back in her chair, thinking about how far she'd come. Growing up, she had always been aware of the subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, ways the world could be unfair. Her parents have raised her to believe in justice, to stand up for herself and others, even when it wasn't easy. They had always said, asterisk, the fight for fairness starts with knowing your rights. Asterisk, those words echoed in her mind as she drafted her plan. She picked up her phone and called her best friend Tasha, who was also a lawyer. Tasha had been her rock through law school, and they often teamed up on cases that needed an extra dose of grit and heart. Maya, are you okay? Tasha asked, her voice filled with concern as soon as she answered. I saw the video. It's all over social media. Maya let out a tired sigh. I'm okay, but I'm not letting this slide. That officer, Jake Holloway, he crossed a line, and I'm going to make sure he's held accountable. Tasha didn't hesitate. You know I'm with you. What's the plan? Maya smiled, grateful for her friend's unwavering support. First, I need to gather more information. This can't be the first time he's done something like this. If there's a pattern, I want to uncover it. Tasha nodded on the other end. I'll start digging. Let's find out everything we can about him. If he has a history, we'll expose it. As they hung up, Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. She knew this fight wouldn't be easy. It wasn't just about filing a lawsuit. It was about shedding light on a system that allowed people like Officer Holloway to abuse their power without consequence. But she also knew the risks. Taking on the police wasn't something to be done lightly. It could bring unwanted attention, backlash, even threats. Yet, Maya wasn't afraid. She had faced challenges before, and each one had only made her stronger. The next morning, Maya met with Tasha at their favorite coffee shop, a cozy spot tucked away from the bustling streets. They sat in a corner booth, laptops open, papers spread out between them. Tasha had already started her research, and what she found was troubling. Jake Holloway has been with the force for over a decade, Tasha began, scrolling through her notes. There have been multiple complaints against him, use of excessive force, racial profiling, even a few cases of unlawful detainment. But here's the thing, none of them ever stuck. Either the victims didn't pursue it, or the cases were dismissed due to lack of evidence. Maya frowned, her mind racing. That's exactly the problem. People get worn down, scared, or they just don't have the resources to fight back. It's designed to protect him and others like him. Tasha nodded. But we're not going to let that happen this time. We have the video, eyewitnesses, and your platform. We can make sure this doesn't get swept under the rug. Maya spent the rest of the day reaching out to community leaders, activists, and legal allies. She knew this wasn't a battle she could fight alone. Every call, every meeting strengthened her resolve. People shared their own stories of encounters with Jake Holloway, each one adding another layer to the case. It was clear now, this wasn't just about one bad cop. It was about a system that allowed him to thrive. But Maya also knew she had to be strategic. The legal system was complex, and winning a case like this required more than just passion and evidence. She needed to anticipate every move, every counter-argument. That's where her skills as a lawyer came into play. She spent hours reviewing past cases, looking for patterns, studying the tactics used by defense teams in similar lawsuits. Every detail mattered. As the days went by, the tension grew. The media had picked up the story, and it was gaining traction. Some outlets painted Maya as a hero, standing up for justice. Others tried to discredit her, questioning her motives, her past, anything they could use to shift the narrative. Maya knew this would happen, but it didn't make it any easier. She had to stay focused to remind herself why she was doing this. One evening, as she was reviewing her notes, her phone buzzed with a new message. It was from an anonymous number. The message was short, but it sent a chill down her spine. Asterisk, drop the case, or you'll regret it. Asterisk. Maya stared at the screen, her mind racing. She had expected resistance, but this felt personal, threatening. She quickly called Tasha, her voice steady but urgent. Tasha, I just got a threat. Someone wants me to back off. Tasha's tone was immediately serious. Maya, you need to be careful. The shows are getting to them, but we can't take this lightly. I'll reach out to some security contacts, just in case. Maya nodded, her resolve hardening. Let them try to scare me. It won't work. If anything, it proves we're on the right track. But deep down, Maya knew the stakes had just been raised. This wasn't just a legal battle anymore. It was a fight for her safety, her integrity, and her mission. And she wasn't going to back down, no matter what. As she sat back in her chair, staring out the window at the city lights, she felt a mix of fear and determination. This was only the beginning, and she had no idea what was coming next. But one thing was clear: she was ready for the fight of her life. The days following the threat were anything but calm. Maya felt the weight of the message in every quiet moment, but instead of backing down, she poured herself even deeper into the case. Each step forward seemed to uncover another layer of the tangled web surrounding Jake Holloway. There were stories from people who had been stopped without cause, harassed, even arrested under questionable circumstances. Some had tried to file complaints, only to be met with indifference or outright hostility from the department. Tasha worked tirelessly by her side, digging through records and reaching out to their growing network of allies. One of the most crucial breakthroughs came when they found a former officer willing to talk. His name was Chris Diaz, and he had served with Jake years ago before leaving the force. Chris had seen firsthand how the system protected officers like Jake, turning a blind eye to their misconduct. They met Chris in a quiet diner on the edge of the city. He was nervous, constantly glancing over his shoulder as if expecting someone to walk in. But when he started talking, his words carried a weight that couldn't be ignored. Jake's been like this for as long as I've known him, Chris said, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. He knows how to work the system, how to push just far enough without getting caught. And when someone does try to call him out, well, let's just say the department has ways of making those problems disappear. Maya leaned forward, her voice calm but firm. Why are you coming forward now, Chris? What changed? Chris sighed, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and determination. I stayed quiet for too long. I saw things I should have reported, but I was scared. Scared of losing my job, of what might happen to my family. But seeing your story, it reminded me of why I became a cop in the first place. I wanted to protect people, not cover for bullies like Jake. Maya nodded, her respect for Chris growing. Your testimony could be a game changer, but I need you to be prepared. Coming forward like this won't be easy. They'll try to discredit you, to make you seem unreliable. Chris met her gaze, his jaw set. I know, but I'm done hiding. As they left the diner, Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. Chris's story added another piece to the puzzle, but it also raised more questions. How deep did the corruption go? Who else was complicit, and how far were they willing to go to protect their own? Meanwhile, the media attention around the case continued to grow. Maya found herself navigating interviews, carefully choosing her words to avoid giving away too much while still keeping the public engaged. The pressure was immense, but she knew the visibility was crucial. Every story shared, every voice amplified brought them closer to justice. But not everyone was on her side. Online, the backlash was growing. Anonymous accounts flooded her social media with hateful comments, questioning her character and motives. Some accused her of trying to ruin a good cop's career, while others hurled outright racist attacks. Maya tried to ignore it, focusing instead on the overwhelming support she received from her community. But late at night, when the world was quiet, the words lingered, a reminder of the uphill battle she faced. One evening, as Maya and Tasha were reviewing evidence, there was a knock at Maya's door. She wasn't expecting anyone, and the late hour immediately put her on edge. She glanced at Tasha, who nodded, her expression serious. Maya approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole. It was an older man in a dark suit, holding a briefcase. Maya opened the door slightly, keeping the chain in place. "Can I help you?" The man gave a polite but cold smile. "Miss Carter, my name is Samuel Briggs. I'm here on behalf of the police department. May I come in?" Maya's grip on the door tightened. "You can say what you need to right here." Briggs's smile didn't waver, but his tone grew more pointed. "Very well. I'll be brief. The department is aware of your lawsuit, and they strongly advise you to reconsider. These kinds of cases rarely end well for either party. I'm sure a woman of your intelligence understands the potential consequences." Maya's heart raced, but she kept her expression calm. "Is that a threat, Mr. Briggs?" Briggs chuckled softly. "Not at all, Miss Carter. Simply a suggestion. You've already made your point. Perhaps it's time to move on." Maya stared at him, her resolve unshaken. "You can tell the department I'm not backing down. This isn't just about me. It's about holding people accountable, and I intend to see it through." Briggs nodded, his smile fading slightly. "I see. Well, I hope you'll reconsider. Good night, Miss Carter." As he walked away, Maya closed the door, her mind racing. Tasha stood nearby, her concern evident. "They're trying to intimidate you. They know you're a threat." Maya nodded, her determination only growing stronger. "Then we're on the right track." But even as she spoke the words, a nagging sense of unease settled in her chest. The stakes were higher than ever, and the fight was far from over. Every step forward brought new challenges, new dangers. But Maya knew one thing for sure: she wasn't alone. And as long as she had people like Tasha or Chris and her community by her side, she would keep fighting. The battle for justice was just beginning, and Maya was ready for whatever came next. The city buzzed with an undercurrent of tension, as if it knew something big was about to happen. Maya could feel it too. Every step she took seemed heavier, every glance over her shoulder more cautious. The lawsuit was moving forward, and with it, so were the stakes. Evidence was piling up, testimonies were being prepared, and the public's eyes were fixed on her every move. But beneath all the progress, an uneasy feeling gnawed at her. The pressure was unrelenting. Late nights in the office became the norm, with Tasha by her side, both of them fueled by determination and too much caffeine. They pored over case files, refining their arguments and anticipating every possible defense the police department might throw at them. Each document they uncovered seemed to tell a darker story, revealing a system designed to shield its own, no matter the cost. One night, as they worked in silence, Tasha suddenly looked up, her face pale. "Maya, look at this." She turned her laptop around, showing an internal memo from the police department they had received through a whistleblower. The memo detailed strategies to discredit Maya, including digging into her personal life and using her past cases against her. It was a chilling reminder of how far they were willing to go. Maya's jaw tightened as she read the memo. "They're desperate," she said, her voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. "They know they're losing control." Tasha nodded, but her expression was grave. "Desperate people are dangerous, Maya. We need to be careful." The words lingered in the air, heavy with unspoken fears. They both knew the risks, but neither of them was willing to back down. This wasn't just about winning a lawsuit, it was about exposing a broken system and fighting for those who couldn't fight for themselves. As the trial date approached, the tension reached a boiling point. The media frenzy intensified, with reporters camping outside Maya's office and apartment. Every day brought new headlines, some supportive, others questioning her motives. The community rallied around her, organizing marches and holding signs that read, *Justice for all and hold them accountable, *. But the opposition was just as vocal, with counter-protests and inflammatory rhetoric aimed at undermining her credibility. Then one evening, Maya received a call from an unknown number. She hesitated before answering, her pulse quickening. "Hello." The voice on the other end was low, almost a whisper. "Miss Carter, I have information you need. Meet me at the old warehouse on 5th Street. Midnight. Come alone." Before she could respond, the line went dead. Maya stared at her phone, her mind racing. It could be a trap, but it could also be a crucial lead. She knew she couldn't ignore it. Tasha was immediately concerned when Maya told her about the call. "This is risky, Maya. You don't know who you're dealing with." "I know," Maya replied, her voice resolute. "But if there's a chance it can help our case, I have to take it." Tasha sighed but didn't argue. "At least let me wait nearby, just in case." That night, Maya drove to the warehouse, her grip on the steering wheel tight. The streets were eerily quiet, the city's usual hum replaced by an unsettling stillness. When she arrived, the warehouse loomed in the darkness, its broken windows and rusted doors adding to the sense of foreboding. Maya parked a block away and walked toward the building, her heart pounding. She stepped inside, the sound of her footsteps echoing the vast empty space. She could barely make out a figure standing in the shadows. "Miss Carter," the voice called out softly. "Yes," Maya replied, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The figure stepped closer, revealing a young man with a nervous expression. "My name is Marcus. I used to work in the department's IT division. I saw things they didn't want anyone to know." Maya listened intently as Marcus explained how he had come across incriminating emails and reports, documents that detailed cover-ups, falsified evidence, and internal discussions about officers like Jake Holloway. "They've been protecting him for years," Marcus said, his voice trembling. "But I couldn't stay silent anymore." He handed Maya a flash drive, his hands shaking. "Everything you need is on here. But you have to be careful. They'll do anything to keep this from coming out." Before Maya could ask more questions, the sound of tires screeching outside broke the tension. Marcus' eyes widened in panic. "They found me," he whispered. "You have to go." Maya didn't hesitate. She slipped the flash drive into her pocket and ran toward the back exit, her heart pounding in her chest. She could hear voices shouting, the sound of boots on the ground. She pushed open the door and darted into the alley, her mind racing as she tried to stay one step ahead. When she finally made it back to her car, she barely had time to catch her breath before speeding away. Her hands trembled as she gripped the wheel, the weight of the flash drive in her pocket a constant reminder of what she had just risked. By the time she returned home, Tasha was waiting, her face filled with worry. "What happened?" she asked, her eyes scanning Maya for any signs of injury. Maya quickly recounted the encounter, her voice a mix of urgency and relief. "We have it, Tasha. The proof we need." Tasha's eyes lit up with determination. "Then let's make sure they can't bury this." As they plugged the flash drive into Maya's laptop, the screen filled with document after document, each one more damning than the last. They had everything: emails, internal reports, even recorded conversations. It was a treasure trove of evidence that could blow the case wide open. But as they sifted through the files, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The closer they got to the truth, the more dangerous things would become. And with the trial just days away, the final showdown was looming. The flash drive's revelations left Maya and Tasha reeling, but they had no time to process the weight of what they'd uncovered. Every document, every file was a piece of a puzzle that exposed a deeply entrenched system of corruption. It was everything they needed to strengthen their case against Jake Holloway and, by extension, the police department. But as they meticulously organized the evidence, the reality of their situation became even clearer. They weren't just fighting one man. They were up against an entire system desperate to protect itself. The next morning, Maya woke to a series of urgent texts from Tasha. A major news outlet had leaked a partial story, claiming that Maya was in possession of sensitive police documents. The timing couldn't have been worse. If the department suspected how much she knew, they would stop at nothing to discredit her, or worse, silence her entirely. Maya's phone rang. It was Tasha, her voice tense. "Maya, we have a problem. That leak wasn't an accident." "What do you mean?" Maya asked, her mind racing. "There's a mole," Tasha said, lowering her voice even though she was alone. "Someone in our circle tipped them off. They know what we have, and they're trying to get ahead of it." The words hit Maya like a punch to the gut. She had trusted everyone who was helping with the case, but now doubt crept in. Who could it be? And what else might they know? Before she could respond, another call came through, this time from Chris Dyers. Maya quickly switched lines, her anxiety mounting. "Chris, what's going on?" His voice was shaky, panicked. "Maya, you need to get out of your apartment. Now." "What? Why?" she asked, already moving toward her door. "I overheard some of my old colleagues talking. They're sending people to raid your place, claiming it's part of an ongoing investigation. They want that flash drive." Maya's stomach dropped. "How much time do I have?" "Not much," Chris said. "Just go. I'll explain more later." She hung up and grabbed her laptop, the flash drive, and a small bag she kept for emergencies. Within minutes, she was at the door, her heart pounding as she navigated the city streets. She couldn't go back to her apartment, and she didn't know who she could trust. Every shadow, every passing car felt like a potential threat. Maya called Tasha again, explaining the situation as quickly as she could. "I need a safe place to stay," she said. "Somewhere they won't think to look." Tasha was already thinking ahead. "I've got a friend who owns a cabin about an hour out of the city. It's remote, no cell service, but it's secure. I'll text you the address." As Maya drove toward the cabin, the weight of the situation pressed down on her. She was being hunted, and the people coming after her weren't just trying to protect Jake Holloway, they were trying to protect themselves. The flash drive had more than enough evidence to implicate several high-ranking officials, and if that information came to light, it would shatter the department's carefully constructed facade. When Maya finally reached the cabin, the isolation was both a comfort and a reminder of how dangerous things had become. She stepped inside, locking the door behind her. The place was small but cozy, with a single bedroom, a kitchenette, and a wood-burning stove. She set up her laptop on the kitchen table, determined to keep working despite the circumstances. But as she reviewed the files again, something caught her eye. There was a series of emails between Jake Holloway and someone identified only by their initials, LW. These emails were different from the others, more personal and filled with veiled threats and cryptic instructions. Whoever LW was, they seemed to be orchestrating much of the cover-up. Maya called Tasha immediately. "I found something. There's someone higher up, LW. They're pulling the strings." Tasha was silent for a moment, then said, "LW. That could be Lieutenant Walker. He's been with the department for years, and he's known for being untouchable." Maya's pulse quickened. If we can connect him to this, it changes everything. He's not just protecting Jake, he's protecting himself and the entire system. As they talked, Maya's laptop suddenly froze, the screen flickering before going black. Panic set in as she tried to restart it, but it was unresponsive. Then her phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. Asterisk, "You're in over your head. Walk away while you still can." Asterisk. The timing was no coincidence. They had found her, even in the remote cabin. They were watching her, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Maya knew she had to act fast. She couldn't let them destroy the evidence, and she couldn't let fear dictate her next move. "I'm not stopping, Tasha," she said, her voice firm, despite the fear creeping in. "We're too close." Tasha's response was immediate. "Neither am I. We've come too far to let them scare us off now." As the night stretched on, Maya felt the weight of the conflict bearing down on her. The stakes were higher than ever, and the danger was closing in. But she also knew this was the moment that would define everything. The fight for justice was reaching its breaking point, and there was no turning back. Maya barely slept that night, her mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. The next morning, she and Tasha regrouped at a secure location, a makeshift war room in the office of a trusted ally. They had one goal: to expose everything. With Chris Dyers willing to testify, Marcus's flash drive of downing evidence, and now the possible involvement of Lieutenant Walker, they were closer than ever to unveiling the truth. But time was running out, and the pressure was unbearable. As they prepared for the trial, Maya received another call from Chris. His voice was steady but urgent. "Maya, I have something big. I found a recording of a private meeting between Walker and Jake. It's on an old apartment server, but I've got a copy." Maya's breath caught. "What's on it?" Chris hesitated. "It's Walker giving Jake direct orders to target certain people in the community, telling him exactly how to cover his tracks. It's not just about protecting Jake, it's a systemic strategy." Maya's heart raced. This was the final piece they needed. She arranged to meet Chris at a public location to get the recording. When they met, Chris handed her the USB drive, his eyes scanning their surroundings nervously. "Be careful, Maya," he said. "Once this gets out, there's no going back." That night, Maya and Tasha stayed up reviewing the recording. The audio was clear, every word a nail in the coffin for Walker and the corrupt system he represented. It was shocking, even for them, to hear the blatant disregard for justice. Walker's voice was cold, calculating, as he discussed how to suppress evidence, manipulate reports, and ensure officers like Jake stayed protected. The morning of the trial was tense. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with anticipation. Maya felt the weight of every eye on her as she took her seat. The prosecution presented their evidence methodically, each piece building on the last. Testimonies from victims, the flash drive documents, and Chris's first-hand account painted a grim picture of the department's corruption. But it was the recording that delivered the final blow. As the audio played in the courtroom, a hush fell over the room. Every word echoed like a hammer striking an anvil, and by the time it ended, there was no doubt about the extent of Walker's involvement. The defense scrambled, their arguments unraveling in real time. Walker, who had been sitting confidently in the gallery, now looked visibly shaken. It was clear he hadn't expected this level of exposure. Jake Holloway's face was a mix of anger and fear, his once arrogant demeanor crumbling under the weight of the evidence. The judge called for a recess. The damage was done. As Maya stepped outside the courtroom, the press swarmed her, cameras flashing and microphones thrust forward. She spoke calmly, her voice carrying the strength of someone who had fought tirelessly for this moment. "We've shown today that no one is above the law," she said. "This case isn't just about one officer or even one department. It's about accountability, about ensuring that justice serves everyone, not just a select few." But just as she was starting to feel a sense of victory, her phone buzzed with an anonymous message. "Asterisk, you think it's over. Think again, asterisk." The words sent a chill down her spine. That evening, as Maya and Tasha reviewed their next steps, a breaking news alert flashed across the screen. Lieutenant Walker had been arrested on charges of obstruction of justice and conspiracy, but the report also revealed something shocking. Walker wasn't acting alone. There was evidence suggesting he was part of a larger network spanning multiple cities, involving influential figures in law enforcement, politics, and beyond. Maya stared at the screen, the realization sinking in. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a much bigger fight. The trial had exposed a key player, but the system they were up against was more extensive and deeply rooted than they had imagined. Maya turned to Tasha, her resolve stronger than ever. "We've started something we can't stop," she said. "And we won't stop until every last piece of this system is brought to light." Tasha nodded, her eyes fierce. "We're ready." The story wasn't over. It had only just begun.